But when he does get into trouble, you need to lean on your support. JeffHindla, this has been the guy. I mean, you brought up the fact, Jeff, on the Bacchus. I mean, going back to Season 1 and beyond, right? Jeff has been a staple of the Smite scene for so long and still just doing it. Look at that, 37-20 lifetime as far as his win-loss is concerned. Obviously in the positive there by just a little bit. Have you actually got a chance to play against Jeff in any of our international matches?
Yeah, we have. At the Smite Masters, we faced him in the quarterfinals, and Game 2, they actually managed to beat us off a good rotation to defend BaRRaCCuDDa. And
so what is that like? Different supports can vastly change the matchup. What's it like going up against Jeff?
It's very different to anybody you've gone up against in Europe because he's just such a figurehead for his team, and he's almost impossible to tilt. I don't think I've ever seen him tilt.
Very true.
No matter what you do to him, he will always be that calming voice to the rest of the team as well.
Watch his rank stream. That's like the funny part. It's just I love Jeff entirely, but yeah, Alpha's got to check out Jeff on a rank stream for that non-tilt factor.
Well, I'm asleep then.
And competitive, very different worlds. And Jeff in competitive is absolutely a beacon of positivity. We won't speak for his ranked matches. SpaceStation Gaming, though, they're looking to boost their elo here. Down a game to Luminosity Gaming as we head into picks and bans. Andinster there. Such a focal point for this squad. Another one of the players that has transitioned from the jungle into the mid lane. He's been there for about a year now. And he looks, no problem there. Absolutely strong as a mid laner. But the team around him, SpaceStation Gaming, again, they look fantastic on paper, guys, but they can't seem to put it together. Coming into game number 2, what's the number one thing they need to change?
More CC in their draft. It was very limited coming out of... it was just basically the jungler on Susano, and it was going to be the Fafnir coming out for the CC. And you need more from the front line. Osiris is able to dive the back line very well when he's ahead, but when he's behind, it's very difficult to do that.
And also, when it comes down to Osiris CC, it's a hard CC in that it's a stun, but like actually confirming the judgment tether, you got to chase the player down, it's delayed. It's not as if you have, I'm going to go to Agni stun for some reason, but it's not like you have a driving strike, something you push the button, they get stunned, right? You got to wait a while. It's really tough. So I'm with you. I want to see some more crowd control. Taco, what do you think?
I'm actually not surprised at all, at least for SpaceStation, to handle the banning phase in this manner, eliminating the Ratatasker. But I am a little bit surprised that they didn't actually try and take a look at that Morrigan potentially. And maybe it wasn't necessarily the lone Ratatasker, although Ratatasker is incredibly potent. I do still favor the selection, though, for SpaceStation to try and run back that Soul selection. I think that Andinster was doing a pretty excellent job on the Soul, despite how heavily focused out he was getting.
It's interesting. Not that I have a problem with the Soul necessarily, but I feel like Andy has this wide god pool. We've seen a number of different things from Ra to Hades, right? We've seen so many different things out of Andy. Why do you think they're going back to the Soul?
I think it's just a standard comfort pick, but I'm going to look at LG right now. If Hui and AMC are on the table, what do you do? Well, obviously, you pick them both up.
Oh, hey, yeah. I'm looking at Taco, and she's pointing to the screen, and I'm sitting here like, what's wrong, Taco? Oh, yeah, there's 2 hunters here. I mean, realistically, not too much of a surprise. The first time we saw AMC jump back into the professional meta, he was played in the middle lane. Hui has been played in the middle lane a number of times. I forget, some European mid laner seems to like Hui mid.
Nah, I want to know his name.
Wolfie, Alpha Jackal's very own mid laner, loves Hui mid and was doing it before. It was cool, so to speak. So, I mean, both these hunters really play mid no problem. Personally, I like Hui better in the middle lane. I think he brings a little bit more as far as what you're losing out of picking a traditional mid laner. I'm using Cobb, though, ton of early push. And if you're going to be dealing with the Soul in the mid lane, that's kind of what you're going to be looking at.
And what's more, you're going to be starting both Hui and AMC in the mid lane, and that's just immediately 100% guaranteed push, especially with the Raijin banned out.
There is still a possibility for SpaceStation. I mean, it's highly unlikely just because of the fact that you wouldn't really want to play an Izanami against any draft that consists of a Hui, but The Ullr, though. Ullr, I'm really liking this choice just because that's the clear that you needed to try and compensate for exactly what Luminosity were trying to accomplish, that early clear push. And Cabrakan as well, LG really trying to put the hurting on in the early game.
So right away, I want to mention the Ullr, or the Zuller, if you will. Ullr, we always mention it. Ullr is a confidence pick. It is a skill test. You pick Ullr when you know that you're going to slaughter somebody with it. You're looking for the 1v1 kill. You're looking for the burst damage. And like I said, you come in, when you pick Ullr, you say, I'm going to win because I'm better than you. So this is a statement piece. I want to talk to you, Jackal, about the Cabrakan. You mentioned this character a lot just sitting here in conversation. What is it about Cabrakan that you want to see here?
I didn't actually want to see it in this draft, considering I want to see it in the last draft because there was like so much potential for lockdown there, and that's what Cabrakan brings. He brings, I'm going to sit in this area, and I'm going to either kill you or you're going to move away from it.
For sure.
But with the souls disapparate, with Ullr able to jump over the wall, Fafnir able to jump over the wall, Cabrakan won't offer as much utility as he would have done in the previous draft.
But even still, he will be able to bring the level 1 devastation. Tremors before you get boots, not something you want to deal with at all.
No, that could be very potent to handle, especially when you combine those tremors on top of a Hu-Yi ultimate as the team fights start breaking out. And what I'm mostly curious about, though, is I could potentially see this being a Hu-Yi for BaRRaCCuDDa still, as opposed for Baskin, although it is certainly a lot of flex pick viability here. At the same time, if Bear's going to be starting off, maybe he might want to start off on his buffs as opposed to pushing out that mid lane. It's not as likely, but Hu-Yi'd probably be the hunter, plus he has a lot more aggression.
I mean, frankly, I expect to see Hu-Yi in the hands of BaRRaCCuDDa. I think that the Amusing Cobb has the better situation going up against the Soul in the mid lane, just push versus push. The Nike selection kind of tells us Cabrakan won't be in the solo lane. At least that's where I'm sort of sniffing around.
This could be a Cabrakan support, and the only reason why I would imagine that is, or Cabrakan jungle.
No, I like the Cabrakan support. I think it's a very underrated support pick. And as you mentioned, like Hu-Yi, AMC, Cabrakan, and Nike, all flex picks. We don't know where any of them are going, and it's up to SpaceStation. I was going to... What?
I am not surprised. I am not surprised in the slightest. This screams Homiefe to me. And Homiefe's Bakasura it's absolutely insane. And Bakasura, heavily overlooked pick. If you can get this guy up and running, it is perfect. And against a composition like Luminosity's, the best thing that they have to try and slow it down is going to be the Ganesha.
You have been talking in meetings for weeks now about Bakasura and how we've got to be afraid of the demon. Before we toss, I want you to give us the quick spiel on why Bakasura is the real deal.
He just hyper carries. If you get him ahead, he frags.
Fantastic stuff. Game number 2 coming at you live. It's Anatoly and it's John Finch.
Thank you, Tom, and the rest of our desk. We do have game 2 here for you, and we got some spicy picks here, Toly. Time to cut a little bit short on Bakasura. You think you could tell me a little bit about what he does for you?
It's just all about the protection shred. He has true damage inside his kit, and honestly, the AoE cone as well. He's going to be able to melt people down, keep them locked down with a cripple if they're still in there, and I think it's very important if you're on the side of SpaceStation to kind of roll around this Bakasura pick. You picked it, and I think that it's very important to get early game momentum here. Yeah. It's a do or die situation. If you don't get the levels or the items, you're pretty much useless.
All right, we got SpaceStation versus Luminosity here, that game 2. And let's go ahead and see where everything's going. Aquarius is taking Cabrakan over there to that solo lane for him, so no problem. But then we also have Mask here that's going to be taking Nike into the jungle. So right now we got him just moving around a little bit.
And right now, we're seeing some of these picks go off that you were talking about before during picks and bans when they were on the desk. We're looking at both Baskin and BaRRaCCuDDa kind of switching the roles of their hunter pick there. Baskin playing this Hu-Yi in the mid lane, BaRRaCCuDDa playing the Muzen Cobb instead. And that's simply because the Ricochet is pretty easy to hit offside some of these mid walls.
And that is going to be something that's easy for him. We talked a little bit, you and I here ourselves while we were watching, about how taking both the Hu-Yi and the Muzen Cobb, I throw them a little bit for a loop there. They let the Hu-Yi through, and you were thinking maybe because they'll take Hu-Yi, we'll take a Muzen Cobb, but Luminosity just took both.
That's true, and it's very rare to see that, at least in the first 2 picks in Season 4. Jeff doing a good job absorbing some of these in-hands from Zapman there, making sure that some of these hits won't back off the wave and clear, taking them a little bit more time than SpaceStation probably wanted to.
And because they let JeffHindla over here in the duo lane so that BaRRa and Baskin could rotate over here and take away this red buff. They did secure that pressure in the long lane, did SpaceStation Gaming, but that does mean they're going to lose a little bit in the jungle.
It's very difficult to contest the lane pressure and clear that Muzen has. That's why SpaceStation is focusing all their attention in the duel lane, allowing their mid for Andinster to just kind of fall behind ever so slightly. Not able to hit the mark on that hammer for Jigz, but instead they'll clear the way very safely. There's still that purple buff invade after the fact, but it seems that BaRRa and Baskin are making this rotation.
It looks like what they want to do is try and go over there and start getting those oracles. BaRRaCCuDDa, or rather Baskin, actually going rather up top so that JeffHindla could set up the stun on a Zapman who has to use the beads just to get out of there. So JeffHindla, a good job forcing that cooldown at Zapman.
And more importantly, they keep their purple buff alive for themselves. That's great farm opportunity now that LG can take advantage of. Homiefe is going to be able to pick up his own speed buff. But what LG did on the left, SpaceStation did on the right. Homie already had the speed from the other opponents, so he was able to pick up a second one here and just continue the momentum. We were talking about the jungle factor here. Homiefe even running into the blue buff there, taking that away from Aquarius, and Cabrakan without mana and no mana chalice. He can't really spam the tremors the way he wants.
He's already a little bit low on mana. Homiefe did have to expend his purification beads to get out of there safely, but I think he's happy with that trade because, as you said, it's going to limit Aquarius so much on this Cabrakan pick.
And I like what SpaceStation did, picking the Amaterasu for Scary D. The way he's been playing this goddess at the end, the tail end of Season 3, beginning of Season 4, he's been an absolute monster with this late game goddess and receiving a little bit of buff with that Heavenly Reflection, going from 14 seconds to 12 seconds, also reducing the mana cost by 10, has more impact towards the early and mid portion of the game.
Now, where do you think we're going to be seeing the pressure here? Because Homiefe is playing Bakasura, and we don't get to see Bakasura that often, Anatoly. Where do you think we're going to be seeing their pressure from him in particular?
It's probably going to be trying to shut down Jigz on us, or sorry, not Jigz because they're not on the same team. JeffHindla, killing these supports. Doesn't matter how tanky they are, it's because you have that true damage. But in the mid lane, Andinster in a little bit of trouble.
Baskin already committing that Sunbreaker, bringing Andinster very low there in the mid lane. So he'll have to play just a little bit safer, but he doesn't have to worry about that ultimate just for the time being. Instead, he's going to let that wave come in under tower and try and farm safe.
And you were asking me earlier on about where the attention from Homie is. Outside of JeffHindla, it could also be onto Mask just like that. That cripple not allowing the Nike to jump on out of there. Only sitting at level 4 at the time, just now hitting level 5 after the minions wasn't able to get that ultimate off for that extra health shield.
And not just that, but Mask decided to go with the blink option so he can look for those blink engages very likely. So he didn't even have a defensive relic to help him escape out of that one either. So he does end up falling, giving first blood over to SpaceStation Gaming. And not just on the SpaceStation, but over there on the Scary D. And Homiefe got a little bit of that assist credit too.
And it's very important now to continue this momentum going. We were talking about what can Baka provide for your team, and that's exactly it. Giving you that cripple field, shutting down key select few members, and without the life from Mask, he's just slowly behind now in the net worth, the experience per minute as a Nike. That's not the best thing in the world, especially when you're dealing with an assassin, let alone a Bakasura on the other side.
And that's what they were saying on the desk too. If you can get that Bakasura rolling, if he can get started, get through the early part to the part where he's shredding, well, I mean, they've already got a successful gank in that in the solo lane under their belt. So this Bakasura is well on his way to getting to the point where he's hard to deal with.
It's very true, but SpaceStation, keep in mind, got first blood in the first game too.
Good stun, let the Sunbreaker come down to Andinster, able to get into Disapparate, so Mask wasn't going to be able to follow up. But once again, Baskin just putting a lot of pressure on Andy.
And more importantly, it's simply because Baskin already had the time and luxury to back to base, getting his boots online before Andinster was, and with the back from Andy, he's going to be able to just slowly give away some more farms. Zapman's going to pick up these oracles potentially while BaRRaCCuDDa is getting the left side lane. That's going to be a decent amount of farm lost under his own tier 1 tower.
And we talked about the Hu Yi Muzen Cobb pick. We know how much that BaRRaCCuDDa likes Hu Yi, but instead they let Baskin take it in the mid so BaRRaCCuDDa can have the Muzen Cobb.
And it's been working out for them thus far, honestly. The way Baskin plays Hu Yi, he's just such a highly talented mechanical player. You can give him a god like any sort of hunter, let alone Hu Yi. Expect him to hit those ricochets. And not only is that skill shot so impactful in the mid lane, but it's also the stuns that he just drops down. He controls a lot of space, provides a little bit of a slowing minefield, and that still is going to hinder Andinster before he goes into that full Disapparate form.
and it lets BaRRaCCuDDa and the Muzen Cobb get all that solo farm that you're able to get now over in the long lane. Like you said, able to get that whole wave pushed under tower. Well, you want your Muzen Cobb sucking all that up, and that's exactly what he's doing. Already level 9. We talked about it. BaRRaCCuDDa just farms really well.
He's always around the right people at the right time. The way he's been starting the game off with Baskin in the mid lane allows him to just get that farm that he needs to. Keeping his own purple buff up for himself allows, or denies Zapman rather, that opportunity to just kind of snowball on the left side of the map. And this is why BaRRaCCuDDa is such a veteran player. He's been through it all, honestly. First year Smite World Champion here. And there's been a few members here as well. You're looking on his other side of the team as Andinster in the mid lane for SpaceStation.
We got a lot of veterans in this game, and I think that's why we're seeing this game 2 be played a little bit slower than game 1. Once game 1 came out hot and everyone realized just how much was at stake, and one team finally gets that loss, now it's like, well, we don't want to drop down to those group stages. Let's get this win here. Let's punch our ticket to HRX. And that's what these two teams are looking to do right now, totally. Luminosity are in the better spot, but SpaceStation can absolutely still turn it around.
It's very scary going through group play because you just don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. It's so wild and unexpected. So many best of 1 actions there. You don't really know what's going to happen. And on top of that, there's energy waiting for you from Europe. There are the Lanimals here every now and then that just whenever they show up, and nobody's going to want to face off energy, their chances are probably better off trying to win this best of 5 for honestly both teams.
Mask and Aquarius looking to go for the invade on this blue buff. Scary D's here, but they got some backup with the rest of the team with Baskin over there to try and slow down Jigz and Zapman, who are rotating in, and they're not going to be able to slow them down. Looks like they do take away that buff there, does Aquarius.
Aquarius, despite getting denied his own blue buff earlier in the game, strikes back, stealing away the blue buff from SpaceStation. So important for a Cabrakan, especially going for the Shoes of Focus, trying to get some of these cooldowns off a little bit more often here. And interestingly enough, going for a different relic selection on this Cabrakan, going for the horrific emblem. Now, you're already fast as a Cabrakan. You're basically considered a fat Loki, right? You're just applying a lot of burst damage quickly. And now, on top of your 2 stuns, a Tremors to displace you, now you have an AoE slow.
Yeah, Aquarius is looking to control the team fight for sure with this Cabrakan pick, and I think that's something he's going to be able to do pretty easily. Like you said, he even has the walls to lock you in. They don't have maybe like the Herc Boulder to bounce around in there this time, but those suns coming out from Baskin on that Sunbreaker is going to be plenty of follow-up, as looks like they want to fight a little bit over these Oracles. They do both go the way of, looks like Luminosity.
Yeah, getting the red side there means that Luminosity gets the vision for an additional minute. Zapman still struggling in the experience department because he was bullied away there from a nice rotation by Baskin and BaRRa earlier on in the game. And it's just been a slow and steady climb yet again from LG. Despite getting first blooded, they know how to fully optimize their farm. And it's Ao feeling very confident going for this Gold Fury. It's a bait, though, I think.
It is already at half health. Homiefe and Andinster are here, and that's enough for Luminosity to just back up. As you said, if no one responds, they'll take it for free. But once they realized it was here, they gave up the bait and instead went ahead and backed off their tool.
I think if they don't see Homie there, then they still try to go for that Gold Fury. Maybe 4-on-2 on the right side. Still a 1-on-1 between these 2 solo laners. And Scaredy having a slight edge in this matchup simply because he can always silence out Aquarius during those Tremors. And not only that, once the levels come online, Scaredy is going to have more sustain on this Amaterasu every time he switches those stances.
Stun comes out in the mask. Wow. Pillars follow up. He immediately gets deleted. Andinster gets credit for that. SpaceStation's second kill of the game. Andin's low, but he's on his way out of there. Aquarius looks like he wants to keep up the chase, but I don't think they're going to be able to, Totally.
No, not at all. And this is the difference here now for SpaceStation Gaming. They don't have to deal with a Ratatasker from Mask or Morrigan from Baskin that could transform into that Ratatasker. So now when they are playing aggressive, they can still safely disengage without having to worry about that global pressure. And LG now finally trying to get back into this game. SpaceStation still keep on the pressure. Homiefe not with the most farm in the world, sitting at level 9, but at the same time, Mask hasn't been getting the farm that he would like either.
But I still think this is the person in the game this is the best news for is actually Homiefe. He's on this Bakasura pick where he really needs to be able to show up with it. And not just that, Totally, but there's been a little bit of struggles for him at land. So his team in a position where they're ahead, he's on a pick that we know that he likes, they're going to be able to show up here.
Last year, Homiefe was so close to tasting HRX when he was with Flashpoint back there. Just one game away, couldn't quite find the W against Orbit at the last game of that day, and that allowed allowed, I think it was actually Luminosity, to get into HRX, just waiting and hoping that Orbit could pull through for them this time around. Homiefe now trying to find his first experience at HRX.
And this looks like a hard commit onto the Gold Fury this time. 2 ultimates already committed. Luminosity do take that Gold Fury with no one there to contest it. Zapman looking to get a little bit back from it. So despite giving up 2 kills, Luminosity are now actually up 500 gold.
And this is something that they've been known to do consistently. Even in the first game, they didn't necessarily force the Gold Fury in a 5-on-5 fight, but they know when they have that advantage that they could just sneak it away. And this is, you give Luminosity an inch, they're going to take a mile. But at the flip side, SpaceStation, they're going to try to go with an objective of their own.
And this is a good call. Luminosity, if they knew it was happening, they certainly weren't around. SpaceStation take that one away to try and get a little bit back after giving up that Gold Fury.
I don't necessarily expect them to even contest that, even if they were around that corner, simply because there were 3 ultimates expended from LG trying to get that Gold Fury. The Suns from Baskin, the Dharmic Pillars from Jeff, even the Stinger from BaRRaCCuDDa through the Gold Fury applies a lot of damage to any sort of AI unit, as well as maybe passing through and apply a cripple to an enemy god.
And this is why we say that these teams, 2 teams, are so close, totally, because when Luminosity come over and take away a Gold Fury, and they do it so cleanly, SpaceStation are like, well, they committed literally everything. Let's go take the Portal Demon, and they do that cleanly. We're seeing 2 at the top of at NA, you know, E United obviously in that group as well, but 2 some of the top teams here fight it out.
And despite the scorecard reading 2-0, hold that thought though, as Andinster's wanting to get off the damage onto Mask. Homiefe trying to get off the damage with the Butcher Blades. Now that he has Hasten Katana, he's able to chase down anybody he really wants to.
And Mask is still not a bad target for Andinster at this point. I mean, only with that Gladiator shield, so he could still do some good damage. We saw him chunk that was the Supernova, but it took a good bit of that HP out. But Mask still had his ult available, so he could have got out if he needed.
And with no beads, though, on the side of Mask, if he gets caught in that cripple field, he's going to force to use that ultimate, trying to use that health shield, but the damage from Homiefe will certainly still take effect.
Zapman, though, or rather, Baskin's the one that could be in trouble as Homiefe goes in aggressive. Luckily, though, Mask is here, and there's that blink I was just about to ask about that lets him come in and help out.
He didn't want to necessarily use that blink to pop the ultimate, which is where 99% of the engagements will actually come from, but instead, he wanted to just peel for Baskin, making sure that he wasn't going to take an early tumble there. This is the difference between playing Morgan or Hou-Yi. Because Baskin is feeling so confident in the earlier stages, he's making these aggressive positionings, trying to get off the poke onto Andinster. And despite Andinster being on the back foot, as long as he's surrounded by Homiefe, he can strike back.
And that jungle mid is, as we see some more aggression over here on the right-hand side. Aquarius has those thorns popping, but it's not deterring SpaceStation. They go ahead and secure that kill onto him. Now they're up 3-0 and leading in the kills.
Very important for Scary D to absorb all that tower aggro to allow Homiefe to find the kill there. LG have made the rotation but a little bit too late. Even SpaceStation not taking advantage by going for this tier 1 tower, but BaRRaCCuDDa's on the backhand side.
BaRRaCCuDDa is here, but gets stunned out very well by Jigz. Andinster now low again, and Baskin and JeffHindla right here. Drops down the Supernova, actually turns it back around. Dharmic Pillars, though, are enough and bestows it upon BaRRaCCuDDa.
Between a rock and a hard place, nowhere to go for Andinster, but at least he picked up Baskin on the flip side, his former teammate there during Soar Gaming, and using that Supernova so well, knocking him up, not able to really get up into that dive bomb the way he would have wanted to. And this is what we mention sometimes when we talk about Baskin. Despite being such a good, talented player, sometimes he makes over-aggressive, reckless plays without some help from his teammates.
And a lot of the times, those turn out well for Luminosity, actually. Baskin goes in and makes the hero play, but just right then it didn't work out for him. So I think it's a little bit a part of the identity of this team. But either way, now SpaceStation are the ones with the map control. They take down tier 1 tower in mid and in the solo lane. So now Luminosity have to fall back a little bit further if a fight breaks out.
Another key factor for SpaceStation is the more and more they win these team fights, the longer it's going to take LG to get another stack of that Nike passive. Yep. Once you hit 10 kills collectively as a team, you're going to get additional movement speed, additional damage for your team, and with the success that SpaceStation have been having in these team fights, I don't expect LG to get that stack anytime soon.
Oh, it's looking like they're going to have a hard time of it, but not only are they going to be slowing down mass progress, but they're going to be closer to Homiefe on this Bakasura getting that build online, where, as you said, he can come through and shred these tanks like JeffHindla, Mask, and Aquarius without too much trouble.
It's very true. It's going to be difficult to lock down Homiefe, especially he can use that ultimate just for CC immunity.
Mass takes half his health, has to use the ultimate, and then jumps out. Jigz actually goes in aggressively. The Ohm is enough to lock him in place for the moment, and he's going to have to back off. So they do force Mass to back.
And that's not a bad idea for Jigz to jump in aggressively like that, considering he still has his ultimate. He could bait out a lot of cooldowns, use that Draconic form just to go immune for some damage. It's now SpaceStation trying to still play aggressive, knowing that Gold Fury is up.
And it's no surprise they go aggressive here as Supernova comes out on the back end. BaRRaCCuDDa already taking half his health. Draconic Corruption coming out from Jigz, not able to lock anybody down, but once again forcing out Luminosity right when the Gold Fury spawns.
And ScaryD has made this rotation, whereas Aquarius is on the far right-hand side, not able to make the impact. SpaceStation are the ones to start this up. It's already sitting at half health. That AoE chorus from Jigz was so huge.
They shred the Gold Fury. No way for Luminosity to come in. Not only did they know what was happening, they had Oracle Vision at the time too, so they could see it. They just couldn't get in there totally. Now SpaceStation are the ones who've moved a little bit back into the lead. Not just those kills, but about 2,000 gold as well.
And with 2 ultimates committed there between Andinster and Jigz, that could potentially allow LG to start up the Portal Demon same way that SpaceStation did the last time around. But without the ultimate from Mask, he's going to be the prime focal point trying to shut him down. At SpaceStation, they're not done yet. They get 1 objective. They want to go for 2.
And this is just what we saw Luminosity do last game. When they had the lead, they started trying to force objectives. Now, SpaceStation aren't way out in front or anything like that, but this is the way LG did it. They just forced it and took it off the map. But now Luminosity forced them out, and they're the ones getting it down to half health. There are plenty of SpaceStation gaming here. They do drop it for the moment. Blinking in his Homiefe. He wants to go in on BaRRaCCuDDa.
And BaRRaCCuDDa forced a retreat there, using the Stinger, crippling out Homiefe. He gets the shell. He runs away. ScaryD able to take out LG's Hunter as Homiefe runs into safety.
That's big that Homiefe was able to live, and BaRRaCCuDDa still falls 1-0 so far in favor of SpaceStation Gaming, but Homiefe did have to back up so they don't have too much map pressure as Baskin continues to look to pressure out Zapman.
Just delaying the back from Zapman. Gold Fury is not available for a little bit longer there, and with that 1 kill, that Portal Demon will be looked at from SpaceStation. Despite not having their Hunter present at the moment, having Andinster play the Soul is enough in-hand damage.
ScaryD's in the back, but he doesn't have that much mana to try and help out in this engagement. Just as looking to zone rather as they still hold on to the Portal Demon. Mask is here to push in, but it wasn't enough. SpaceStation do secure it, and they go ahead and fall off as they take 1 more win.
Mask was almost able to steal that away with 1 hit from the Rend. Andinster was holding off on some in-hands. He did pop his first ability to get off some of that self-healing and then some of that AoE damage, and SpaceStation walking away thanking their lucky stars that that wasn't stolen away. Even if it was, it wouldn't be the end of the world for them. It was a calculated risk that they knew that would benefit them greatly.
It felt a little bit like a 50-50, maybe like 60-40 there, Anatoly. And those are the calls we weren't really saying Luminosity made. When Luminosity went for those objectives, they knew they were either going to get it or they were going to take the fight. That one does work out in SpaceStation's favor, though, and their lead still climbing.
And whenever we look at these SPL caliber teams versus, let's say, random ranked games or casual games with your friends, this is the difference the way they play. They take these calculated risks that are very small in risk, but relatively medium reward.
Sprint popped by SpaceStation Gaming. They want to go in and find a pick. ScaryD going to help collapse onto JeffHindla, silencing him out, and Supernova cleans it up. Zapman gets credit for it, though. Wall's actually coming out from Aquarius. That's going to keep Andinster in place for a moment. The Aegis keeps him alive.
The Disappare was really good. Baskin going to drop the stuns, but he's going to get chased down by Homiefe. The Aegis going to buy him a little bit of time, but a nice silence locking him out. Homiefe gets traded out with 1. JeffHindla has fallen as well. It's going to be actually 3 dead LG members. Well, only Homiefe took a spill.
And that fight does go heavily in favor of SpaceStation. Like you said, 3 for 1. Now they're free to come back because they have everyone they need to burn down this fire giant. They've got Zapman here, they've got Andinster, and they've got Jigz. And there's no one who can really contest this except for BaRRaCCuDDa, but he doesn't have his ult.
Not at all. It seems like the tables have completely flipped since the first game. SpaceStation are doing the same exact thing that LG did. And BaRRaCCuDDa, he just stole it away from SpaceStation.
BaRRaCCuDDa, the legend, comes in and steals it. No one zoned him. He kind of just walks up and takes it totally. Now the Fire Giant's going to slow down some of that push from SpaceStation Gaming. I'm not saying this has swung back in LG's favor, but it's definitely slowed SpaceStation down.
This is the difference, I think, between SpaceStation and LG.
Yes.
When LG call for objectives, everyone gets off from the objective. Whenever we saw, I think it was Sinosure in the first set, whenever he tried to contest an objective also against E-United, everyone just backed off, made sure he's dead first, continued on to the objective. SpaceStation thought that they could maybe kill BaRRaCCuDDa before he got even closer. The percentage for BaRRa to even get that steal, about 10% maybe, but you got to take a risk for the biscuit sometimes, and that's exactly what he did. It shuts down the momentum from SpaceStation. Now without this Fire Giant, there's no damage for Zap to be able to demolish these towers.
And look at Bear's face down there. We saw it for a moment. Looks cool as you like with the hot steel. The word I used maybe too much last game though, totally, was clean. That's what Luminosity looked like. It was clean engagements on those objectives, and that's what we didn't see from SpaceStation. We joked about it a little bit on the Portal Demon where it was kind of a 50-50. Well, it's the same thing they just let happen on the Fire Giant by letting BaRRaCCuDDa just kind of walk up to him. They zoned him for a moment, and then it looked like the call was maybe a little unclear. They get off him, but they keep the objective, and he ends up just stealing it.
We'll see if SpaceStation learn from their mistake as the game progresses and as the set continues, honestly, also, because that's going to be at the back of their mind in the future, definitely, whenever they make an objective call, especially as they start to begin to pull this Gold Fury.
And now blinking in, this time is Mass. That's the blink engage he's been looking for with his ultimate. The Sentinel of Zeus coming out. Dharmic Pillar's in response. Now it's only Homiefe and Scary D who are way out front. Scary D actually got a big stun, but now the Sunbreaker's dropping down. Zapman able to get the kill onto Aquarius.
And let's go ahead and take a Sennheiser. Listen in to Luminosity as they continue this fight.
You're fine, you're fine.
Nice, we can keep maybe fighting.
No, I'm really low.
Careful
that
Baka coming
underneath. Baka's coming over here.
Yep, Baka's underneath you guys.
Can we defend?
They're going back on it, yeah.
I'm super low.
Alright. We can.
I don't think they can do it with me here.
Be careful for that
Baka.
That Baka's split pushing Bar.
Can we look at this Baka? Can we look at this Baka?
Yeah,
I'm
eating shots for you, Bar.
Yep.
I'm fine.
Can we look at him?
That's Soul.
Ullr.
Solo
Three down.
Nice.
Take it. I got it back.
Yeah, we're not with you guys.
I might be dead then.
I'm
probably. Yeah, I'm dead. Let's see if we get out.
So even though that engagement doesn't go in favor of Luminosity, those comms did sound pretty clean there to me, totally. They ended up going a little bit too far, did BaRRaCCuDDa, and they got picked off.
It was just a numbers advantage for SpaceStation. We heard JeffHindla call Baka split pushing on the north-hand side, but everybody's eyes just kind of lit up. Now Scary D in a little bit of an awkward position, forced to use that ultimate defensively, but the wall not allowing him to escape.
Aquarius coming up big with that tectonic shift there. That's what cleans up that kill for him. See you later, Scary D. But totally, in that last fight, we get to see a little bit of what split pushing does, not just on the map, but in the comms. Half of it had to be spent going, can we go in on Bakasura? We heard those calls from him. So there was a little bit of split focus there from him, and that's because of what Homiefe was able to do over in that duo lane.
So LG were able to identify all the problems, right? Baskin was low. He wanted to back, but Baka was split pushing. That was called as well, but they weren't decisive about what they wanted to do. Baskin canceled his back. He was very low. He had to make the decision, and he was basically a non-factor in that team fight, considering how far back he had to play around some of these members out of SpaceStation, and it was just a numbers advantage. Even though they killed Zapman in the beginning of it, the advantage for SpaceStation is they clean up 2 more.
And that's why I said, even though the fight didn't go in their favor, that the calls were clean. Because like you said, they did identify everything that was going on pretty perfectly, but they were in a damned if you did, damned if you don't situation because of Homiefe split pushing. In the end, they do pick up a kill, they drop BaRRaCCuDDa, they drop the Gold Fury, and now it's going pretty heavily in SpaceStation's favor. They're up about 6,000 gold, and they also take that Portal Demon, and they're looking to take a little bit more.
Fire Giant responding in 40 seconds. We could easily see SpaceStation grouping up around there, starting to drop some wards aggressively, making sure that there's not too much vision from LG. We're seeing on the top right side of your screen here in the mini-map, or right above those right side mid-harpies, the sentry control that SpaceStation have, both at the top and the bottom side, making sure that there's no possible angle that Luminosity can enter the Fire Giant without being spotted.
And as we group up here for this next fight, totally, I don't know if you remember in that listen-in, we heard JeffHindla say, I'm soaking up shots for you, BaRRa. That's something if we listen in, I bet we get to hear JeffHindla say a lot. He's taking those shots for BaRRaCCuDDa, being that perfect front line for him and helping him look good in these last engagements. As now Luminosity are ready to push in. They don't want to let SpaceStation take this Fire Giant for free, which is just respawned. Yes, they're down about 6K, but they can still fight into that.
And this is what Homiefe is just doing consistently, is being that annoying little Bakasura that can easily clear a wave. And while you're killing minions anyway, you're getting more attack speed, getting more movement speed to be so mobile, having already speed buff on side. Having this hasten katana, he's so slippery. It's difficult to lock him down and to get away from him once he drops that cripple field.
And as you said, building up that regurgitate, so when he comes in, he's spawning more minions that you got to deal with already. Andinster pretty freely able to pull the Fire Giant. That gets JeffHindla in out of position, but also blinking in was Mask on the Nike Sentinel Zeus enough to slow Zapman, and that sets up a wall from Aquarius.
His jump was down, but he's going to break through the cage. Thorns is popped for Aquarius. Zapman is trying to do what he can, and with 3 members around Aquarius, that's going to be the first victim.
And he went a little too far. Jigz also ends up falling down to BaRRaCCuDDa, so at least it's 1 for 1 here so far. Now Zapman is the call. Homiefe ends up cleaning up Mask, though, to keep him alive. BaRRaCCuDDa, though, on the hunt, looking for Scary D as Andinster takes down Baskin.
And trying to get away. Jeff was very concerned, making sure that BaRRaCCuDDa gets away during that whole time. It's a 3 for 1. LG are walking away. They're going to have to concede this next Fire Giant, and Jigz sacrificing his life. I'm really surprised that Homiefe was so patient with his ultimate, using it defensively, peeling for Zapman instead of using it to engage.
And what started that fight, remember, it felt like Aquarius went in onto Zapman. I actually got a really good wall off on him, but he goes too far. He's beyond the rest of his team, and they just turn and collapse on him. They blow Aquarius up, and the team fight kind of collapses for from there.
Aquarius identified that Zap's jump was down, but even though you drop the wall of the Cabrakan, you could still break it down after a couple of hits, and that's exactly what Zapman did. He was able to squeeze on through it, and then once Zapman made the call that he was in trouble in the back, everybody from his teammates made sure to bail him out. Keeping your hunter alive is so important in the late game.
And Aquarius is tanky right now, but not super tanky to Andinster in particular. I mean, he does have that Void Stone there that does give him some protections, but not a whole lot. Andinster, they burned him, man. And now they're able to take the tier 2 in mid, tier 2 in left, along with the Fire Giant, skyrocketing that lead up to about 11,000 in their favor. And now SpaceStation looking as strong as LG looked last game.
The problem with Aquarius's build here is that he just simply has not much health. That Void Stone gives him about 150 health or so, but it's not too much at the end of the day. Even with the Cabrakan passive, mitigating some damage for yourself and your teammates, it's about a 4% mitigation, and it's not too much to write home about. There needs to be more health, more magical defense also on the side of Aquarius, simply to absorb that Stellar Burst Supernova combination from Andinster, because when the Tremors come out, he's a sitting duck for all the damage from Andy.
SpaceStation just going to come on over, wait for the Gold Fury to spawn. They still have about another 2.5 minutes or so with this Fire Giant, so they've got time to get this Gold Fury and go over and clean up that last tier 2 tower in the right and try and make sure there's nothing on the map for LG to farm back.
And I think this is the time that SpaceStation can easily clean out this game. I don't think this one is going to go to a 3-0 like the last North American set. I think these teams are a lot closer and evenly matched, and SpaceStation now, the Fire Giant around their waist for another 2 minutes, and after this Gold Fury, they're starting to split the map a little bit. Homiefe still split pushing on the left, whereas Scary D split pushing on the right, and 3 more members stand strong in mid.
And he can. Did you see how fast he was with that speed buff around his waist, too? He's zooming around the map. Scary D over here taking down that tier 2 tower in right, and they do still have about another minute and 40 seconds to try and do a siege with Fire Giant.
They're trying to kind of spread Luminosity thin across at least one lane, and that alone, that one little shift of a rotation could allow Homiefe to blink in aggressively, drop that ultimate, and isolate someone from this team fight, allowing the rest of his teammates maybe to get this first Phoenix.
Mask is over on the right side here, towards that solo lane side. He's been blinking in with that Sentinel Zeus, trying to get some slows off, but he's way behind Homiefe right now, so they could turn on him and try and blow him up. Jigz goes in, and they're looking to try and take this Phoenix down. Already some good damage coming out to Aquarius. Mask just looking instead for some poke.
SpaceStation are very hesitant about crossing that Phoenix little line because they could get walled off from Aquarius. They need to be mindful about their positioning. Even though they have Soul and Ullr that can melt these objectives, they'd rather melt LG first.
Mask jumps in. Dharmic Pillars have come out trying to slow down, but the call seems to be to push in onto Baskin. Actually, Homiefe is the one that gets blown up. Baskin taking the first blood here in this engagement. That's enough for SpaceStation to back off and LG defend their Phoenix.
Now it's a 5-on-4 with LG being the aggressors this time around. Mask is going to go and drop the ultimate after blinking in, but is this really not enough to try to find anything here? Really trying to utilize Mask's passive, those stacks, getting more and more movement speed. Having only one member at level 20 means that they only have that one stack thus far. As soon as Baskin or Aquarius at level 20, the second stack from Nike will take into effect, and if LG can just find 4 more kills, then that's when Mask will become fully online.
Fire Giant is falling off here right about now for SpaceStation Gaming, so they grab that Portal Demon. That way they can go back, finish spending their items, come in and get that Fire Giant one more time in about 1 minute's time. Luminosity instead, they don't have to worry about fire minions this time, as Aquarius actually is getting caught out over on the right-hand side. Ultimate comes out from Scary D, and jumping in his mask to try and help out a little bit, but doesn't have the Sentinel Zeus available.
Oh, really good juke there from Aquarius, preventing that third hit from Scary D, stunning him out there. The rest of LG made that rotation, making sure that Aquarius wasn't going to fall, and only having to use that horrific emblem and that other relic there. He's not able to really die. The Thorns was a good little deterrent there to make sure that Andinster wasn't going to continue the damage. It does a lot of return fire, especially when you're level 20 soul. That's almost full build.
And now Luminosity are grouping up around the Fire Giant, maybe looking to do, or rather SpaceStation rather, are looking to group up around this Fire Giant so they can go ahead and get it pulled out, only spawning in about 5 seconds. And I don't think Luminosity are going to fight over this one. They're looking instead to try and defend.
The way they've defended that first mid-Phoenix siege was just almost flawless. They didn't give up anybody. They killed out Homiefe. They're not too worried if SpaceStation get this Fire Giant. They know that attempt number 2 will still be relatively successful. They're waiting for that second stack of the Nike passive, like I was talking about before, to just amplify their team fighting prowess a little bit further. And not only that, just to get maybe Mask a little bit more resilient here. Look what he's done. He's went into Mergardian Mail. So as long as he stands relatively close to Homiefe, he's going to slow his attack speed.
That's something that they're going to be looking for from Mass, to be that frontline presence for him. He is a little bit far behind, but luckily enough, his ultimate provides so much extra health for him too, that he is still plenty tanky for him in that front line. So as you said, it's going to be hard for these damage dealers to break through, and that's why that last defense didn't go so well for them. They had to be careful of Aquarius and Mask.
And I'm expecting this time around to Homiefe to just be a little bit more patient, right?
Yeah.
The same way that he was able to hold on to his ultimate to use it to peel for Zapman as opposed to engaging. And that's the difference between these high caliber SPL teams, is their patience, their ability to recognize when is the right timing to go in.
And looks like now's the time to go in. Already getting damage off is Andinster. Aquarius looking to put some damage onto Jigz, but that's a tanky dwarf, and he has no problem tanking it on the chest as they look to retry.
And not even worried a SpaceStation, considering Scary D took some poke. The sustain between the Fire Giant and switching stances on the auras, even having a health challenge for good measure, allows SpaceStation to continue attempting to siege his mid-Phoenix. Already getting about 30% of the health. And the damage here from Andinster in the back, they're going to go in.
Blink in from Mass, but that gets the immediate response from the dazzling offensive from Scary D. Gets the stun off, and they back up, but one more time. Good bounce there coming out from Baskin. The healthier health bars are Luminosity.
That's true. Andinster took a little bit of poke. He's forced to retreat here. Not too many relics used on the side of SpaceStation, but they're not done with the siege yet. They still have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to try to go for their first Phoenix of the game, but LG, they're not deterred. They don't care that they're down 15,000 gold. They're trying to get an answer from SpaceStation.
And SpaceStation having a hard time this time. JeffHindla gets caught out. Supernova actually drops down on top of him. Not enough to kill, but it does force him back. They're still not ready to push into this Phoenix. They actually take it down. Finally, they do get that mid lane objective.
And that was only because Homiefe isolated Baskin on the left-hand side, forcing him to use that Aegis because of that ultimate from the Bakasura, having so much true damage there as well. Now SpaceStation grouped up on the left-hand side. They're going to try to go for their second Phoenix.
And this time Aquarius goes in and locks down 2. One able to jump out, but Scary D able to make it out too because they focused the wall. Sunbreaker comes out, but everyone from SpaceStation's already on the retreat.
Andinster might be in a little bit of trouble. Great stun from Zapman in the distance, not allowing Baskin to cut the distance and find the ricochet stun potentially onto his mid laner, keeping him healthy as well with his self-sustain and the Fire Giant buff. Now giving the red buff to Andinster. It's going to allow them to maybe attempt another siege on the left-hand side, still having Fire Giant for another minute. It just seems that SpaceStation are not giving up this push ever. They don't want to go back to base here.
Well, they can try again, and they know how important it is to try and get this last push while they still have an advantage. The longer it goes, the less their lead is going to mean. Jigz is the one that goes in, looking for the hammer onto Aquarius, but doesn't quite find it. Instead, it's Mask who's trying to frontline for him.
Zapman gets disarmed there by the third hit of Rend out of Mask. Going to delay the siege a little bit longer there, but now finally going in there, dropping off Zapman and Andinster. They're grouped up.
Once again, Aquarius able to wall in 2 members. Up into the air goes Baskin, laying down to Homiefe aggressively, but that's not what you wanted. Homiefe gets a double kill and cleans up Aquarius as well. He's going in looking for a little bit more. JeffHindla, get out of there. You're just an elephant. Triple kill comes out for Homiefe as the Phoenix falls.
And BaRRaCCuDDa dropping as well. Only Mask to keep his Titan alive. It's not going to matter here. SpaceStation, they tie up the series 1-1.
And that's why we see SpaceStation stick around there, totally. I know you were talking about how insistent that they were on that objective, but they knew if they broke through, it's actually 33 minutes into the game, they can just end.
They were pretty much full build with the exception of Andinster, trying to finish off one more additional item. That's all they really needed to anyway. They didn't care if there was a full build Andy. They knew that they had the power with the Fire Giant. Between Andinster playing the Soul, Zapman playing the Ullr, they had enough tower and Phoenix Siege power behind their belt. As long as they weren't going to group up too much around the Cabrakan Homiefe combination between the Ricochet and the Suns dropping on them, then SpaceStation can siege indefinitely.
And Homiefe came up big for them in that last engagement in particular. Yeah, he got the flashy triple kill, but in particular, taking down Baskin on the side of that team fight. Baskin, I think, thinks he can take them 1v1. He jumps in on him, and Homiefe said, no, you cannot, and takes him out.
No, not at all here. And that's kind of why that Homie was so successful, because he kind of baited out that Aegis previously.
And well, we'll get that broken down for you a little bit more. Let's go ahead and get over there to the desk, Tom, and break it down.
Well, we got to see a Bakasura. And as Aggro tweeted out, somewhere Pon is smiling just a little bit. Baka making his return to the professional scene here. And in gigantic favor, Homiefe piloted the Bakasura, went off like a frog in a sock. How do you feel about this one?
For me, this is kind of what I was expecting to happen, simply because of the fact that Luminosity's draft just had no real way to try and handle the Bakasura. I mentioned it right before we got into the game itself. The only real form of CC they had to try and slow down that Baka was the slow from the Dharmic Pillars. I don't think Mass can really be that effective because all that tree damage from Baka, especially when he has those Butcher's Blades, it's just insane to try and handle. He was just cutting through every single member of Luminosity.
And I mentioned it as we were talking. Dharmic Pillars and the Cabrakan ultimate, very good for locking somebody down if they don't have a jump. What does Bakasura have? A jump. He also bought a blink to make sure you could engage without having to use said jump. So all that lockdown potential that they had was just useless against the Bakasura jungle, which made it so effective.
There's also the idea of shutting down the Muzen Cobb, right? Muzen Cobb hasn't been picked for 4 years because he's easy to camp and easy to kill, right? So what do we see SpaceStation respond with? Well, they're going to pick the Bakasura. They're going to pick the Amaterasu, who does a good job at dealing with it. But most importantly, and you mentioned this, the Ullr as well.
Yeah, Muzen Cobb wants to box you in lane. He wants to try and fight you, and Ullr will kill you if you try and fight him if you get too close. That's exactly what we saw was Zapman was able to hit his abilities consistently. He was able to poke out his lane. I mean, he didn't manage to get a lead, unfortunately, but what he did do was stall out the lane enough so BaRRaCCuDDa did not have the same effectiveness that he did last game.
And, I mean, that's really what you're looking for. Sometimes the victory is just the stop. You don't always need the next level, right? And what we saw to there for SpaceStation Gaming, the Soul went hand-in-hand with the Ullr. A lot of player damage, a lot of structure damage, and all piloted by this guy right here.
And it's also just the fact that Jigz was able to have that Fafnir again. I mean, what's the best possible composition you could think of when you have a Fafnir behind you? Soul, Ullr, and Bakasura, and Andy just completely displaying the turnaround potential that Soul can actually have multiple times whenever he would just drop that supernova, would really catch somebody completely out of position, and you guys might not have caught it there, even in the replay, but Mask used his ultimate, it was just still deleted immediately.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those scenarios where if items in Smite had commercials, this is where Witchblade shows up, right? I mean, everybody here basic attacking and just what do you do with it? Fafnir is going to be on top of that. It was just really scary as far as all the basics are concerned. So SpaceStation kind of win this one. A beautiful picks and draft phase, pick and ban phase, and they executed very, very well. So 1-1 so far. LG, what kind of adaptations do they need to make?
I think they just need to make sure they don't pick their lockdown too early, because otherwise it just gets baited out and then the draft just turns against them like it did in that game too. I don't really feel that they had the need to pick the Muzen Cobb and the Hui that early. They could have picked one and then maybe look to ban out the other, or just potentially fight one of them in lane, because you know that Zapman is going to try and pick his ADC early, try and get the pressure in lane, and you can get it with the AMC just hand in hand.
Do you think that players have, sometimes I feel like the meta drives players into trap selections. AMC is extremely strong for a number of reasons, but he's got a giant Achilles heel, and you can't ignore that. Do you think the players have become too safe with AMC now? Because he used to be picked last, and now we're seeing him picked first overall.
That felt a little bit more like some slight overconfidence from Luminosity. I think that they just kind of saw themselves as still being able to have the superior drafting phase, or at least the superior execution, and that ended up biting them in the butt because there was absolutely... I mean, I can't say there was like no reason whatsoever to pick Hui AMC, but when you reveal the cards that early and make it obvious that these are the two carries that we're going to be looking for and every other part of our draft is just going to be based around protecting them, then that can make it pretty easy, especially for a veteran team like SpaceStation. Those players have been around for so long. They know how to adapt to those kind of situations.
Last point I want to make about the pick of man phase was the Nike. I actually really like this character. I think she's criminally underplayed. The jungle, not my favorite position, but she still gets the job done there. But we got to watch her just get blown up anyway. I mean, what happened with the Nike pick?
She just has no way to peel for herself. So if she gets caught out of position, she's really relying on a Valiant Leap. But it's a slow wind-up unless you have that plan of action activated beforehand. And if you use your plan of action to then leap away, you then leave yourself exposed because you have 20% less HP shield if you activate your ultimate at the Sentinel of Zeus. And against the Bakasura, he's just going to chase you down if you're a Nike.
Yeah, it's kind of what we saw there was just this guy, Homiefe, just eating everybody. 13,500 damage, kind of low from what I expected. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, everybody was just kind of dead already.
I mean, he wasn't poking anybody out. He was just straight up killing them. And a good taunt. I like that.
Oh, I like that. And, you know, I've been asking for this all season. As the beginning of the triple kill towards the end, I've been sitting here saying, Homie, give him the hyper carry. We've seen Homie play some of these more tanky characters, the Osirai and everything. I'm done. Give Homie this type of character. Let him chow down. And this is how you find the wins for SpaceStation Gaming. Small
side note there, I love that play that Homiefe actually made by that left-hand Phoenix because attacking the minion kept that Hasten Katana effect active.
Mm-hmm. Really small stuff.
I remember he used to play Alcon to extremely high level. We might even get to see him play at this tournament.
You know, that's the type of thing because, like that I want to see because there is something to be said. You know, you coach Rival. There's something to be said about sticking to what you're good at, right? And you let Death Panther play weird stuff, and you let Wolfie play the Hou-Yi in the mid lane, right? Like that's identifying your strengths and weaknesses. And looking at what SpaceStation Gaming has done, and they've kind of faltered a little bit during the regular season, giving Homiefe some of these support-style picks? No. Homiefe, one of the best pure assassin junglers in the game. Give him the tools.
Yeah, and I think a thing that we saw over both these games was they were won extremely early. I mean, first 10 minutes, you could already see that there was somebody clearly ahead and clearly almost going to win that game unless a mistake was made. In the first game, Luminosity managed to get that early lead, get that early pressure. In this game, well, Bakasura happened.
Yeah. He actually just got to go off.
It actually just shows also how crucial even the slightest mistakes can really affect the entire pacing and outcome of a game. I do feel as though that one was ultimately probably SpaceStation's to win just because their draft seems so much better than what Luminosity was trying to make happen. But you really just have to consider one buff camp is sometimes all that it takes for a game to be turned entirely against you.
And Baka can just eat that buff camp.